Shalom, welcome to another Scripted Nuggets with Restorers of Truth. Today's Scripted Nugget is based upon the two eternal witnesses, and we're going to find that in the book of Devarim, the two eternal witnesses. This is unlike the witnesses that is found in the book of Zechariah or the book of Hazan or Revelation. This is referencing the two eternal witnesses that is set in stone, that witnesses to mankind and specifically to the house of Yahuda and the house of Yasharal every Yom and every Shanim and every year. So let's identify first of all what is a witness. A witness must be present and can confirm via testimony or attestation to a fact or an event. Secondly, a witness must give evidence or proof of knowing and seeing something. Thirdly, a witness must be found credible and in obedience to the Torah or the law, and not guilty of committing the same criminal act or sin as the offender. So we're talking about the two eternal witnesses. They cannot be found guilty of breaking the Torah. Now let's look at our base text, Devarim chapter 30, verse 19 and verse 20. Speaking through Moshe, Yahuah says, I call heaven or Shamayim and earth Eretz to record, and many translations would use the word record. But in essence, this is saying as a witness. And you may find a translation that says to be a witness. I call Shamayim and Eretz to be a witness this day or this Yom against you. Against who? The house of Yasharal and the house of Yahuda. That I have set before you, Nathan, life and death, barakat and cursing, kelala. Therefore, he says, choose life that both you and your seed may live. Verse 20. That you may love Yahuah. This is continuing with the commitment. You may love Yahuah, your Elohim, and that you may obey Shema, hear. Now, many times when you see the word hear as it regards to the voice of Yahuah, he's talking about obedience, not just hearing, but obedience, taking heed, actually carrying out what the voice of Yahuah is saying. For what reason? It says that you may cleave, dabak, unto him, for he is your life and the length of your days or your mean. That you may dwell, Yashab, in the land which Yahuah sware unto your fathers, to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Jacob, to give them. Now, when you look at this, you're going to see, or you should see, this is a covenant with the house of Yahuda and the house of Yasharal. And he's using Shamayim, and he's using the earth, Eretz, as witnesses. Again, a witness cannot be found guilty of the same criminal act or the same sin as the offender. So why is he using Shamayim and why is he using the earth as witnesses against the two houses of Yasharal, Yahuda and the house of Yasharal? Well, let's go back to Bereshit chapter 8 verse 20. After the ark and after the flood, the ark has landed and Noah and his family is off the ark. Look what Noah did in chapter 8 verse 20 of Bereshit, or Genesis chapter 8 verse 20 through verse 22. It says, Noah built an altar unto Yahuah and took every clean beast and every clean fowl, offered burnt offerings on the altar. And Yahuah smelled a sweet savor. Now, when he's talking about smelling as it regards to Yahuah, he's saying, I have accepted this act. I have honored this act. And Yahuah said in his heart, I would not again curse the ground anymore for man's sake, for the imaginations of man's heart is evil from his youth. Now, let's pause for a moment. When he says, for the imagination of man's heart is evil, the reason Yahuah is saying that is because a man's heart, when he's talking about man's heart, he's talking about mankind, he's talking about humankind, he's talking about people. Our heart tends to be swayed by emotions. Our heart tends to be swayed by events and things that occur. Rumors, any type of event that takes place can sway our heart. We can say the wrong thing when we say, I'm speaking from my heart, because the heart can be influenced by situations, by circumstances, even by people, even by events. So he says, neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done. Verse 22, this is where we're getting at. While the earth remains. It has a Hebrew word, kol, or kole. Now, this means as a whole. So it would be more appropriate. It says, while the earth is whole. Seed time, harvest, cold, heat, summer, and winter. Day or yom, and night, Layla, shall not cease. Think about that for a moment. While the earth is whole, this is a witness. While the earth remains, while the earth is a whole, these things would take place. These are actions, these are functions that takes place within and upon the earth. This is the earth's responsibility here. Look what it says. Seed time, these are the 8 things. Harvest, cold, heat, summer, winter, day, yom, and night, Layla. That does not cease. That's a testimony to the house of Yasharal and to the house of Yahuda that his covenant, Yahuwah's covenant, is true. It does not change. Now let's look at something regarding Shamayim in the book of Tehillim, or Psalms 19. The Shamayim declare the esteem of the Almighty, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Yom, day unto day, yom unto yom, uttereth. Nabah, he speaks. Omar, night unto night, it does what? It shows knowledge. There is no Omar, there is no speech, nor language, Dabar, which is words, where their voice is not heard. Every evening, every night, every Layla, when you look up on the Shamayim, look up on the firmament, they are speaking a message. The Torah, the instructions of Yahuah, is written upon the Shamayim within the firmament. They are obedient to what Yahuah is saying. Look what it says in verse 4. Their line is gone out through all the arets, and their words to the end of the world. This is almost like saying the cosmos, world, cosmos. In them hath he set a tabernacle, for a great light called the sun, within the firmament. Look what it says. It's within the firmament, a tabernacle, a place of housing for the sun. Look what the Son does in verse 8. As a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and cheerful as a strong man to run a race. His going forth is from the end of Shamayim, and his circuit, his path, how he travels, talking about the sun, unto the ends of it. And there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. When it's time for the sun to come into this area, the heat does not end in that area. It shows up, it displays, that area feels the heat of this. It's obedient, in other words, to the instructions of Yahuah. Now let's look at something back in Bereshit chapter 1. And Elohim said, let there be lights in the firmament. Now we have the Shamayim, but within the Shamayim is something called the firmament, or what is called Rakia. It is of the Shamayim to divide the day, the Yom, from the night, Layla, and let them be, look what it says, for signs, or in other words, let them be signals. It's a Hebrew word there called oth, O-T-H. It's a signal for what? For seasons, moedim, and this is appointed times. There are appointed times. Not only for feast, but these are signals for appointed time for seasons, moedim, appointed times. It says for yom, for days, yomim, and for years, shanim. And let them be for lights in the firmament. You have shamayim, and then up under shamayim, you have firmament. Rakia, of the shamayim, to give light upon the arets of the earth. And Elohim made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, the Yom, and the lesser light to rule the night, Layla. He made the stars also. Some translations have that omitted. And Elohim set them in the firmament, Rakia again, of Shamayim, the firmament of Shamayim. And they are to give light upon the earth. And to rule over the day, the Yom, and over the night. And what does it do? It divides light from darkness. So when we see the sun, we can see the light. When we see the moon, we can see darkness. And even when we don't see the moon, but nonetheless, this is the purpose here. And Elohim said it was tov, it was good. And then he says, and evening Aref and the morning Boker were the fourth Yom. Now let's look at something in one of the prophetical books of Yahuah, chapter 33. We're going to begin this reading in verse 14, and we will go through verse 26. We're going to start from 14 to 20, then we'll finish up in 26. It says, behold, the Yamin comes, or the days come, saith Yahuah, that I will perform. Now, one translation says the good thing, or the told thing, which I have promised unto who? The house of Yasharal and the house of Yahuda. Now, one have to ask the question, what is it, or what does he mean he will perform the good thing? So that would have to imply that there is something that he's already promised, he's already said, and he called it a good thing. Well, he goes on in this chapter to explain that. He says, in those days, the days in which he's going to perform this, it says, and at that time, I would cause the branch of righteousness. Who is he talking about? Mashiach. The branch of righteousness to grow up unto David, or David, and he shall execute judgment and righteousness in the land. Now, whenever you see the word righteousness, that means obedient to Torah. Devarim says, it is our righteousness to do his commands as he has commanded us. This branch, Mashiach, is obedient to Torah. That's the only reason he could stand and sit upon the throne of David. He has to be obedient to Torah. And we know that under Israelite custom, Hebraic custom, even the king that sits upon the throne has to have a copy of the Torah that they may know to do righteously. Now, verse 16, in those days, in those yom, Yahuda shall be what? Delivered. It used the word saved in this translation. And Jerusalem shall dwell safely. This is the restoration of the two houses. This is the building up again of the new Jerusalem. Now look what it says. This is the name wherewith she shall be called. Who is she? New Jerusalem. It would be given a name called Yahuah, our righteousness. That's awesome. Jerusalem will be given, this new Jerusalem will be called Yahuah, our righteousness. Now, it says in verse 17, Yahuah says, David shall never want a man to sit upon the throne of the house of Yasharal. There will always be a seed from the root of David, that would always sit upon the house of Yasharal, the throne. Neither, now he's performing that good thing. Remember, we read that in verse 14. He's performing a good thing, the good thing that he's previously promised. Now, where did he promise that? In the Shamaim. And we'll see that. The Shamaim declares the esteem of Yahuah in Tehillim, Psalms 19. So he says, neither shall the priest, the Levites, want a man before me to offer burnt offerings, represent the people, going before Yahuah, and to kindle meat offerings, and to do sacrifice continually. And the word of Yahuah came unto Yirmiyahu, saying this, thus says Yahuah, if you can break my covenant. Remember, we talked about two witnesses here, eternal two witnesses. Not the one in Hazan and not the one in Zechariah. It says, if you can break my covenant of the yom, of the day, and my covenant of the night, Layla, there shall not be day and night in this. If you can break this covenant, if this covenant that I've made with the house of Yasharal and with the house of Yahuda, if you can break that covenant, then there will not be day and there will not be night in their season. That is awesome. That is awesome. Now let's continue to read in 33 of Yirmiyahu. Then may also, look what he says, my covenant be broken with David, my servant, that he should not have a son to reign upon his throne. Now, if this covenant is broken, there cannot be Mashiach. If this covenant is broken, no one can sit upon the throne of David. And we know that cannot be the case because the Melachim, Gabriel, came and appeared to Miriam and Joseph and said that he shall save, speaking of Yahusha, as Mashiach, he shall save his people from their Torah breaking or sins. And he will sit upon the throne of David. So look what he says. If this covenant is broken, there shall not be a son of David to reign upon his throne. There will not be Levites. There will not be priests. There will not be those who minister. Look what it says. As the host of Shamaim cannot be numbered, neither the sand of the sea measured, so will I multiply the seed of David, my servant, and the Levites that minister unto me. Moreover, the word of Yahuah came to Yirmiyahu, saying, consider thou not what this people have spoken, saying, the two families which Yahuah hath chosen, he hath cast them off. No, he has not cast them off. They have despised my people, that they should be no more a nation before me, or before them. Look what it says, verse 25. If my covenant be not with day, again, and if I have not appointed the ordinances, the kukah of Shamayim. In other words, their path. There's an ordinance. There's a path. There is a path for the sun. There's a path for the moon. There's a path for everything in the Shamayim, within the firmament that Yahuah has created. Verse 26. Then will I cast away the seed of Jacob. He said, I will get rid of everything, the house of Yahuda, the house of Yasharal, and David my servant, so that I will not take any of his seed to be rulers of the seed of who? He always mentioned these three, Abraham, Yishak, and Yaakov. Look what he says, for I will cause their captivity to return and have compassion on them. So what is Yahuah saying regarding these two eternal witnesses? One, that Yahuah's word, his Torah, his instructions are true. It is permanent. Yahuah has established an eternal covenant with his creation. He has made an eternal covenant with the house of Yasharal and the house of Yahuda. The Shamayim and the Arets, the earth, they give testimony, they give witness to Yahuah's instructions. Every day, every night, every season, every shanim, every year. And even the new Shamayim that is spoken of in Yeshayahu 65 or Isaiah 65 and Hazan Revelation 21, it shows Yahuah's call to obedience to his instructions and to his covenant, and with the house of Yasharal and with the house of Yahuda, and when New Jerusalem is manifested, according to the text, it will be called the city of righteousness. Yahuah, our righteousness. Look what it says in Yochanan chapter 17, verse 17. Set them apart through your truth, your Torah, your word, your debar is truth. Shalom, shalom. See you next time on Scripture Nuggets.